Book 20. While the Greeks armed themselves by their ships, around you, Achilles, the vortex of war, and while the Trojans waited for them on the high plain, Zeus ordered Themis to call the gods to assembly. She ranged far along Olympus's ridge line, commanding them to come to the house of Zeus. They all came, every last river except Ocean, and every last spirit woman who ever haunted a pretty copse, spring, or meadow. They all came to the house of Zeus in the clouds and sat in the stone colonnades that Hephaestus, the master architect, had built for his father. They were all inside when Poseidon came up from the sea. Not even he could ignore the goddess's call. He took a seat in the middle and asked Zeus his purpose. Lord of lightning, why have you assembled the gods? Are you pondering the Greek-Trojan issue now that the fighting has flared up again? And Zeus, who masses the clouds. Earth-shaker, you know my purpose. I care for them, even though they die. Even so, I will stay in a crevice of Olympus and sit and watch and take my pleasure. The rest of you can go out among the Greeks and Trojans and help whichever side you please. If Achilles is the only one fighting out there, the Trojans won't last a minute against him. The very sight of him used to make them tremble, and now he is in passion. I fear he may exceed his fate and demolish the wall. With these words, Zeus unleashed the war, and the gods joined the battle on different sides. On the Greek side were Hera and Pallas Athena, and Poseidon, Earthshaker, and Hermes the Helper, his mind sharp as needles, and Hephaestus, who exuded strength, though he limped along on his spindly legs. The Trojans got Ares, his helmet flashing, Apollo, and the archer goddess Artemis, Leto, Xanthus, and smiling Aphrodite. As long as the gods had been on the sidelines, the Greeks kept on winning. Achilles' reappearance after his absence from the war had reduced the Trojans to spineless jelly. They quivered helplessly when they saw the hero glowing in metal like the war god himself. But when the Olympians joined the human fray, Strife, who drives armies on, lifted her head, and Athena shouted, now by the trench, then long cries from the beach, where the surf pounded in. On the other side, Ares responded, roaring to the Trojans like a dark whirlwind on the city's height, then swooping down along the Simois banks, and called Callicolone. In this way, the gods prompted the two armies to clash in combat. Strife exploded in each camp. Overhead, the father of gods and men thundered, and Poseidon shook all the ground underneath, and the tremors climbed the steep mountain slopes. Ida shuddered from her roots to her peaks, along with Troy herself and the Achaean ships, and in the world below, the lord of the shades, unseen Hades, leapt from his throne and shrieked, terrified that Poseidon would crack open the earth, and his halls would lie open to immortals and men, the moldering horror loathed even by the gods. Such was the force of the gods in collision. Opposite Lord Poseidon stood Phoebus Apollo with fletched arrows. Taking on Ares was gray-eyed Athena. Up against Hera went Apollo's sister, golden Artemis, the huntress with her bow. Leto was countered by Hermes the ally, and against Hephaestus rolled the deep river the gods call Xanthus, and men Scamander. So God went up against God. Achilles, though, wanted to take on no one but Hector. It was Hector's blood that he wanted, to glut Ares' thick belly. But it was Aeneas, not Hector, that Apollo put up to fight Peleus' son, and gave him the courage to do so. Disguising himself as Lycaon, one of Priam's sons, and imitating his voice, Apollo said, "What about all those boasts, Aeneas, to the Trojan princes over your wine, that you could take on Achilles man to man?" Aeneas had this to say in answer, "Why ask me to do something I'd rather not? Fight the hero Achilles, son of Peleus? This won't be the first time I've faced his speed. Once before he chased me off with his spear from Ida when he came after our cattle, and wasted Lyrnessus and Pedasus. Zeus pulled me out then, put some zip in my knees, or Achilles and Athena would have blasted me. She was there in front of him, lighting things up. Had him skewer Lelyges and other Trojans. There's no way for a man to fight Achilles. Some god is always there to protect him. Not that his spear doesn't fly straight by itself, or doesn't stop until it draws blood. But if a god were to level the playing field, he wouldn't beat me easily, even if he could brag he were solid bronze." And Zeus's son, Lord Apollo, Why not pray to the gods and get on with it? You're a hero too. They say Zeus's daughter Aphrodite bore you. He's from a lesser god, his mother being born from the old man of the sea. Go right at him with your bronze, and don't let him turn you back with all his taunts and threats. And he breathed strength into the field marshal, who strode to the front, corseted in light. Hera saw Anchises' son as he advanced through the throng to confront Achilles. She huddled her gods and said to them, Poseidon and Athena, what about this? There goes Aeneas in full blazing armor against Achilles, and it's Apollo who sent him. Come on then, and let's turn him back. Or let's one of us, at least, stand by Achilles and give him strength. Keep up his morale, so he'll know that the best of the gods love him, and the others are worthless as wind. All those divinities who have protected Troy in this war, we've all come down from Olympus to fight, so that Achilles will not be hurt by the Trojans for this one day. Later he must suffer whatever fate has spun at his birth. If he doesn't hear this from the voice of a god, he may lose heart when a god attacks him. Gods are daunting when they appear as they are. Poseidon Earthshaker answered her, There's no need to get all worked up, Hera. I would not wish to have all the gods in conflict. Let's find some out-of-the-way lookout and have a seat. Leave the war to men. If Ares or Phoebus Apollo starts something or holds Achilles back and won't let him fight, then we can get involved in the action, and before long they will take themselves out and go back to the other gods on Olympus, overpowered by our invincible hands. So saying, the blue-maned god led the way to that high heap of a wall the Trojans and Pallas Athena had built for Heracles to help him escape from the sea monster when it chased him from shore to plain. There Poseidon and his companions sat down, their shoulders mantled with banks of cloud. Opposite them the other gods sat on Callicoloni's brows. Around you, my lord Apollo, and Ares the plunderer. So the two sides sat, planning strategies, but reluctant to commence hostilities, even with permission from Zeus on high. The whole plain was filled with horses and men, and the glint of bronze, and the earth trembled under their tramping feet. As the troops advanced, two heroes, eager for combat, moved forth to face each other in no man's land, Anchises' son Aeneas and noble Achilles. Aeneas strode out first, helmet nodding, with every threatening step, war shield curved round his chest, bronze spear poised. Then Achilles began to close ground quickly. A marauding lion has been hunted down by an entire village determined to kill him. At first he ignores them and goes his way, but then one of the young men wounds him with a spear cast, and he gathers himself, crouching with mouth open, foam flecking his teeth, and growling deep in his chest. He lashes his flanks and ribs with his tail, working himself into a frenzy. Eyes glaring, he charges, carried forward by sheer passion, and no one can tell if he will kill or be killed. Thus were Achilles' mood and temper as he closed in on great Aeneas. When they were within each other's range, the shining sprinter was the first to speak. Aeneas, what are you doing out here in front? Have you taken a mind to fight with me because you hope to inherit Priam's honor among the Trojans? Even if you kill me, Priam's not going to hand his kingship to you. He has sons of his own, and he's not senile yet. Or have the Trojans cut a deal for you, some choice real estate and orchards and plowlands for you to possess? If only you kill me. You won't find that easy. If I remember right, I've chased you off with my spear once before, when I made you run from your cattle, careening down Ida's slopes. You never looked back, ran all the way to Lyrnessus, which I then sacked by the grace of Athena and Father Zeus. I took the women captive and led them off, but you were saved by Zeus and other gods. I rather doubt he will save you today, which you seem to be counting on. My advice is for you to get back to your troops before you get hurt. Fools learn the hard way. Aeneas had this to say in reply. Don't think you can scare me off with words, son of Peleus, as if I were a child. I can trade insults pretty well myself. We know each other's ancestry, each other's parents, from hearing the old stories. I've never seen your parents, as you have never seen mine, but men say that Peleus is your father and Thetis, the saltwater woman, your mother. I boast that I am the son of great Anchises, and that Aphrodite is my mother. One set of these parents will mourn a dear son this day, because we're not going to settle this with childish words and walk off from battle. But if you really do want to hear my story, you're welcome to listen. Many men know it. Cloud-herding Zeus first bore Dardanus, who founded Dardania, sacred Iliad. was not yet a town on the plain. The people then all lived on the slopes of spring-dotted Ida. Dardanus' son was King Erichthonius, who became the richest of mortal men, with 3,000 horses in marshland pasture, all of them fine mares with tender foals. The north wind lusted for them as they grazed, and mated with them as a blue-maned stallion. They conceived and gave birth to a dozen fillies, who could prance over a field of grain and not ever break a tasseled ear, who could bound over the sea's broad back with their hoofs on the crests of the breaking waves. Erichthonius begot Tros to rule the Trojans, and then from Tros 3 peerless sons were born, Ilus, Assaracus, and Ganymedes, a godlike man, the most beautiful mortal, whom the gods snatched up because of his beauty, to pour for Zeus and live with the immortals. Then Ilus had a son, peerless Laomedon, and Laomedon begot Tithonus, Priam, Clytius, and Hicetaon, a scion of Ares. Assaracus begot Capys, and he, and Chryses begot me, and Priam Hector. These are my bloodlines, my proud lineage. But Zeus gives men their worth, or lessens it, as he will, since he is strongest of all. At any rate, let's stop talking like children as we stand here in the heat of battle. We could trade a boatload of insults and not reach the end. Men's tongues are glib, and we have words for everything. Whatever you say, you'll hear back again. Why should we wrangle like angry women, quarreling in the street, all worked up, saying anything, whether it's true or not? Battle is what I want, and nothing you can say can turn me back from it. Man to man with sharp bronze. Come on, let's see what it tastes like. With that, he drove his heavy spear into the metal circles of Achilles' shield, making it clang like a cymbal. Achilles tightened his grip and held the shield forward, afraid that Aeneas' tree of a spear would come all the way through. A foolish notion. He had forgotten that the gods' glory gifts do not fail, nor do men easily foil them. Aeneas's war spear broke through 2 layers of the shield, but the gold layer, Hephaestus's special gift, stopped it. And there were still 2 more, for the lame god had wielded 5, 2 bronze, 2 tin, and the gold that stopped the ashwood spear. Achilles now threw his long-shadowed spear and hit the disc of Aeneas's shield, beneath the outer rim, where the bronze and oxhide ran thinnest. The Pelean ash shot right through. The shield gave a loud crack, and Aeneas held it away and cringed while the spear rocketed over his back and stuck in the earth, taking 2 circles of the shield with it. Having dodged the missile, Aeneas rose in a state of shock at how close this spear stood to him. Achilles drew his sword and leapt at him with a blood-curdling yell. Aeneas recovered quickly and picked up a stone that 2 men, as men go now, couldn't lift, but which he handled easily. In an instant, Aeneas would have hit the charging Achilles with that stone on his helmet or on the shield that had just saved him, and Peleus' son would have killed Aeneas in close combat. But Poseidon had all this in sharp focus and spoke in the moment among the immortals. Alas for great-hearted Aeneas, who will now be killed by Achilles and go down to Hades because he innocently obeyed Apollo, who will do nothing to keep him from perishing. Why should he, a guiltless man, now suffer for the woes of others, a man who has always pleased the gods in heaven with his offerings? Let us deliver him from the shadow of death. Zeus will be angry if Achilles kills him, for it is destined that Aeneas escape and the line of Dardanus not be destroyed, and disappear without seed. Dardanus, whom Zeus loved more than any of the sons born from his union with mortal women. The son of Cronus has come to hate Priam's line, and now Aeneas will rule the Trojans with might, and the sons born to his sons in the future. The ox-eyed Lady Hera replied, As for Aeneas, Earthshaker, you should do whatever seems best, whether to save him or have Achilles kill him, good man though he be. But we too, Pallas Athena and I, have taken oaths among all the immortals never to ward off doom for the Trojans, not even when the whole city goes up in flames, burned by the warlike youth of Greece. When he heard this, the earth-quaking god went his way through the battlefield and the moving spears until he came to where Aeneas was, and glorious Achilles. He poured a mist over Achilles' eyes and drew his bronze-tipped ashwood spear from the remnants of Aeneas' shield and placed it before Achilles' feet. Aeneas he swung up from the ground and went sailing over row after row of heroes and horses in an immortal vault from the god's hand to land finally on the perimeter of the battlefield, where the Caucones were arming themselves. Poseidon came up very close, and his words flew into Aeneas's ears. Aeneas, what god hoodwinked you into fighting with Peleus' high-hearted son? A better man than you and dearer to the gods. Draw back whenever you encounter him, or else enter Hades before your doom. When Achilles has met his own destined death, take courage and fight among the foremost, for no other Achaean will take your life. Poseidon left him with this revelation. Then quickly scattered from Achilles' eyes the magic mist. Achilles stared hard and, deeply troubled, said to himself, "This is a miracle right before my eyes. My spear's on the ground, but the man I threw it at, trying to kill him, is nowhere in sight. It seems Aeneas really is dear to the gods. I thought he was just boasting. To hell with him. He'll never have the guts to face me again. Glad as he must be to have gotten off this time. Well, I better call up our war-loving troops and try my hand with the rest of the Trojans." He leapt along the ranks and called to each man, "Greeks, close this ground and engage the enemy man to man. I want to see some spirit. Do you think I can fight all those men by myself? Not even Ares and Immortal or Athena could close this battle jaws alone. I'll shoulder as much of this as I can, and I don't think I'll come up short. Break right through their lines and ruin the day of any Trojan who comes close to my spear." That was his exhortation. Hector responded by promising the Trojans he would face Achilles. "Trojans, don't be afraid of Peleus' son. I could fight the immortals too with words. It's harder with a spear. They're much too strong. Nor will Achilles accomplish all he says. He'll finish some and leave the rest half done. I'm going after him even if he has hands of fire and fury like cold steel." Thus Hector. The Trojans lifted their spears in response, and the battle was on. Amid the noise, Phoebus Apollo stood near Hector and said, "Do not challenge Achilles, Hector. Wait for him in the throng to lessen the chance of being hit by his spear or his sword close in." Hector fell back when he heard this, terrified by the voice of the speaking god. But Achilles sprinted into the Trojans with a cold yell. He first killed Iphition, commander of a large contingent. This man was the son of Ortyrntius, a raider of cities and a water nymph who bore him under snowy Tmolus in the rich land of Hyde. Achilles' spear split his head in two as he came on, and he fell heavily. Achilles crowed, "Lie there, son of Ortyntius, Iphicion's most formidable of men, dead here, born there by Lake Gygaea, your ancestral land, near the Hylas, isn't it? Where the fish teem and the Hermus swirls." He spoke, but Iphition lay folded in darkness, and his body was soon shredded by the metal rims of Greek chariot wheels. Next came Demoleon, Antenor's son, a good soldier. Achilles pierced his temple through his helmet's bronze cheek pieces. The spear's business end sheared right through the bronze end bone, scrambling the skull's contents and stopping him cold. Hippodamus had jumped from his chariot and was running the other way when Achilles' spear landed in his back. He gasped and then bellowed, the way a bull will bellow when dragged by young men around Poseidon's altar in Hellas, making the earth-shaker beam with pleasure. Hippodamus's manly spirit left his bones. Achilles went next after Polydorus, Priam's son. His father would not allow him to fight at all, since he was his youngest and the apple of his eye. He was the fastest, too, and now he was childishly showing off just how fast he was, running through the front lines until he lost his life. Achilles, the great sprinter, hit him in the back as he flashed by, the spear going through just where the corslet folded under the golden clasps of his belt, and exiting just beside his navel. He fell to his knees with a groan, and as he sank in the dark mist, he clutched his bowels to him. When Hector saw his brother Polydorus sinking to the earth, with his entrails in his hands, everything turned hazy. No longer able to pace the sidelines, he came at Achilles, his spear like a branch of flame. When Achilles saw who he was exultant. "Here he is, the man who has reamed my heart, who has killed my noble friend. Not for long will we skirt each other in the battle lanes." And with a dark scowl he called to Hector, "Keep on coming, you're as good as dead." And Hector, without a trace of fear, "Don't think you can scare me off with words, son of Peleus, as if I were a child. I can trade insults with the best of them. I know you're really good, a lot better than me, but it is up to the gods to decide whether I, a lesser man, will rob you of life with my spear. It's been proven to have an edge before." And he poised his spear and let it fly, but Athena blew it away from Achilles, wafting it back with the lightest of breaths to fall at Hector's feet. Achilles charged with a terrifying yell, his whole being inspired to kill. But the god Apollo whisked Hector away as only a god can, and swirled fog around him. 3 times the shining sprinter charged with his bronze spear, and 3 times he struck nothing but deep mist. On his 4th, last charge, he howled to the winds, "You've escaped death again, dog! Apollo saved you in another close call. You must pray to him every time you go out. But I'll get you yet, next time we meet, if I have a god to help me too. For now, I'll make do with whoever comes my way." And he put his spear through Dryops's neck, dropping him at his feet. He left him there and took out Demuchus, Philetor's tall son, first hitting him on the knee with his spear, then finishing him off with his sword. Bias's 2 sons, Laogonus and Dardanus, he shoved from their chariot, killing one with a spear cast, the other in close with his sword. And then Tros, Alastor's son, tried to clasp Achilles' knees to see if he would spare him, take him captive and let him go, and not kill him because they were the same age. He actually thought he would persuade him, but this was a man with no gentleness in him, a man with one purpose. As Tros clasped his knees in supplication, Achilles shoved his sword down into his liver. The liver slid out into Tros's lap with a clot of black blood, and the world went dark as he expired. Achilles was already upon Mulius, putting his bronze javelin through one ear and all the way out the other, while, in almost the same motion, he struck Agenor's son Echeclus full on the head with his hilted sword. Echeclus's blood warmed the whole blade, and death came in an overpowering violet haze. Deucalion was next, Achilles' spear point piercing his elbow just where the sinews join. His arm hung uselessly as he stood there, staring death in the face. Achilles closed in and sliced into his neck, sending the head, helmet and all, flying through the air. Marrow spurted up through his spinal cord, and then the corpse was lengthwise on the ground. Rigmus, Pyrrhus's peerless son, had come from farm country in Thrace. Achilles' spear transfixed him and stuck in his belly. He fell from his chariot, and as his driver, Erythos, was turning the horses around, Achilles hit him in the back, the blow pushing him from his car. The horses ran wild. Fire raging through a parched forest in a mountain valley when the wind rises and spirals the flames in every direction will give you some idea of Achilles' presence as the black earth ran with blood. A team of broad-browed oxen had been yoked and is now treading white barley on a solid threshing floor. It does not take long for the bellowing bulls to tread out the grain. So the hooves of Achilles' horses trampled dead bodies, shields, the chariot's axle and rails were splashed with blood, kicked up by the wheels and horses' hooves. But the son of Peleus pressed on to glory, his invincible hands spattered with gore.